All right. Not hearing any, I'll go ahead and introduce Pam Wilson and Forrest Schafer to give us their first presentation from this summer. They're going to talk a little bit about the Community Mitigation Assistance Team deployment to the Bridger-Teton. So welcome to Pam and Forrest, and I'll make sure that we can hear you guys. Are you guys unmuted?
This is Pam. I am.
Perfect.
Pam, this is Forrest.
Awesome. All right, take it away, guys.
Okay, so I'm going to kick it off and talk just a little bit about what the CMAT actually is for those of you that may not be as familiar with it. And then I'm going to turn it over to Forrest halfway through and let him talk a little bit more about our actual assignment. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, the Community Mitigation Assistance Team is a new pilot program that is the U.S. Forest Service is sponsoring. And it can be activated at the request of the local forest unit, another land management agency, or even an incident management team. And in this case, we were actually requested by the Bridger-Teton National Forest. So we were not part of an ongoing fire assignment, though there were some small fires in the area while we were up there. So the idea behind a CMAT is that they will provide technical and strategic mitigation support to reduce the impacts associated with wildfires. So that can involve a number of different things. It can be providing mentoring for existing organizations. It can be identifying and providing tools for wildfire mitigation assessments. We could make some suggestions on the highest priorities for reducing wildfire risk within a community. Or we could go there to help build local capacity for sustainable mitigation practices. And so the first pilot was last year in Chelan, Washington, and I think everybody's heard a little bit about that one. And the second one in Jackson Hole occurred in the first 2 weeks of August. And as I said, we were not assigned to an actual incident. But one of the key things behind these assignments is having a really good, diverse team. That's really key to the success of the assignment. So normally there will be 4 to 5 people when a team goes out. This year we had 9 people on the team, and part of that was because Pam Leshak, who is heading up this effort, was viewing this as a training opportunity for potential team leaders, because ideally we would like to have more than just one team in place that could be deployed at any time. So there were 5 of us from the FAC network: myself, Forrest Schafer, Jonathan Bruno, Lilia Falk, and Terry Jenkins. And then we also had 1 fire marshal from Colorado, 1 prevention tech from Idaho, and a videographer, as well as Pam Leshak, who served as our lead. So when Pam and Jonathan were looking at who to bring on the team, you know, they were looking for WUI mitigation professionals that have a lot of knowledge and experience working with communities, developing sustainable mitigation partnerships, and teaching fire adaptation practices. Also folks that are familiar or have developed community wildfire protection plans, and that are used to dealing with public concerns around mitigation. So that's kind of the gist of what we were looking for. But we expect every assignment will be different. This one was very different from what the team did up in Chelan, Washington. And as we got to Jackson, and one of the reasons, the main reason we were requested was because there was a group of partners working up there who felt stuck. They just felt like their interactions with residents weren't optimum, and that they weren't getting enough mitigation work done. So we went through a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and training, and we did that based on a lot of documents that they sent us that we had reviewed before the assignment. And then we also kicked off the week with a workshop up there with partners, and out of that we kind of did a SWOT analysis as well. And the main focus that we decided we had to really work on with them was increasing community capacity to move mitigation forward. And for those of you that have looked at the document that we produced, that was the title of it, was Opportunities to Move Mitigation Forward. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Forrest and let him talk a little bit about the network building components that we went through.
Thank you, Pam. That was a really great overview. And as Pam mentioned, because this wasn't a large active fire, this was a very kind of people-based assignment, and most of the time that we spent awake was spent in meetings and conversations with each other, with stakeholders, or staring at a computer screen. So when we finally did go outside, I'm guessing by this picture that we weren't coping very well with the sun. I think I might have put in the wrong picture. Can we go to the next one? Next slide. Okay, there, that's better. That was actually Kent playing a joke on us and telling us to keep our eyes closed for the picture. But what I really want to point out from this is the connections that were built within this network by bringing people together and really having them work on something really difficult. We'll hear the social network analysis results in a little bit, but in a small way, and with this group, I think those results have really shifted because of those strong connections that were built. And in a way, it reminds me of times I spent on a fire crew when you're working so close and so hard with a group of people. You learn more about the people, but you also learn a lot about the skills and knowledge that each person can bring and how you can work together as a team. And for me personally, and I think for a lot of the other CMAT members as well, there were a lot of skills and knowledge from our group and from other stakeholders that we worked with that I'm able to bring back with me for my daily work. And to close it off, I would say to make it all work, it really helps if you have a group of people that are outstanding in their field. That's it.
Thanks, guys. That was a super helpful overview and great takeaways. Any questions for Pam or Forrest about the CMAT deployment they went on?
Michelle, I might just throw in there, this is Pam, that if anyone is interested in participating on a CMAT team, they should contact either Pam Leshak or Jonathan Bruno. John actually just signed a contract with Pam, and he's going to be offering, I think we're calling them community support teams that would go out during the off-season. So definitely not attached to an assignment. So he's looking for some opportunities to get teams of folks out, you know, over the next 9 months when we're not so much in an active fire season and can really focus on that increasing community capacity portion of this.
Great, thanks for that, Pam. That's super helpful. I do think this is such a cool opportunity. I was able to participate on the deployment in Chelan, and I think it's a great opportunity for network members to kind of give back to the broader community of places working on fire adaptation, to share some of their knowledge and to learn more about who else is out there that we could engage with. So definitely encourage folks to check in with Jonathan or Pam about this more if you're interested in participating or just want to learn more. They did a fantastic report that I think has been shared on Podio. So if you want to check that report out and learn a little bit more about the specific recommendations they had, I think you'll get a little bit more of a flavor for what they did on this deployment. Thanks so much, guys. Again, if there are any other questions, we will have some time at the very end. So if you think of something in a couple of minutes, don't worry. Go ahead and put it in the chat box so you don't lose it, or save it in your mind, and we'll talk about it at the end. Next, we've got a presenter that's joining us from the Washington FAC Net, and Chief Russ Hobbs is with us today to talk a little bit about the Highway 10 fire. So, Russ, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Thanks, Russ.
All right. Thank you. Well, I'm with Kittitas County Fire District 7, and I'd like to paint a quick picture of the district before we begin. So the fire district covers 125 square miles, with I-90 running the entire length of the district. The district is located on the east side of the Cascade Mountain Range, about 100 miles from Seattle, which is to the west, and Spokane being 200 miles to the east. So we're basically located in the southeast region of the state. We've had some significant fires. Obviously, Chelan last year took the lead. So typical of Pacific Northwest, the valley floor is surrounded by an evergreen forest, with the eastern edge of the district turning to scrub steppe dotted by ponderosa pines and fir. So if you could put up slide 1. There we go. So this was called the Highway 10 fire, and on July 2nd of this year, a fire broke out on what would be the eastern edge of the district, which is a little drier, again, more scrub steppe. So the fire was started by a flat tire and a boat trailer and burned just 40 acres along Highway 10, which is just east of the Taylor Bridge. So the fire was windblown and initially threatened 5 homes above the fire on a very steep slope. Our firefighters were able to stage structure engines at each home while wildland firefighters fought the fire. The fire did burn up to, as you can see on slide 2, up to and around the structures, and yet there were no structures lost or damaged. So on slide 3, in contrast to this fire, we'll flash back to August 13th of 2012, where construction workers welding on a bridge deck caused a massive wildfire. This windblown fire was known as the Taylor Bridge Fire and was about probably a quarter of a mile from where this fire started in 2016. So that fire burned 23,500 acres, 60 homes, and multiple outbuildings, with just over 1,000 firefighters and personnel assigned to that fire. That fire burned over 15 days. At the start of the fire, fire crews attempted to rescue the same owners that were threatened by the Highway 10 fire this year, but they were pushed back by a wall of flames. It was truly a miracle that no one was injured. So what was the difference? I think 2 factors played a significant role this year. The landscape then and now was primarily sagebrush, slide 4 please, with a mix of ponderosa pine and Doug fir. The only difference was the density and now standing dead trees. The flame lengths this year were 3 to 4 feet versus 8 to 10 feet with heavy torching during the Taylor Bridge fire. The second most important factor was the home construction and vegetation surrounding these homes. The homes were rebuilt in the exact location as they had been before, but the Wildland Urban Interface Code had since been adopted by the county, and each home was built with fire-resistant material. Additionally, homeowners had followed the Firewised principles around their home, deciding not to plant trees and bushes along the side of their homes. So firefighters were staged above the fire, protecting homes threatened by the fire below, because it was safe for them to be there, and these homes were easily defendable. So one family was so confident that they refused to leave and actually asked the crew if they'd like to come in for lunch during the fire. So prior to the Taylor Bridge fire, our fire reduction crew had just 30 requests by homeowners for assistance. Since that fire, we've had a full calendar, which we've now got 2 crews that work from spring through fall, assisting homeowners with fuel reduction and shipping projects, which has been, I think, extremely successful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Russ. I think it's really interesting to have an opportunity where you had a fire previously and then had another fire in that same area, and to see the difference after people have taken some action. And I was interested in, you mentioned that the county had developed some building codes in the interim period. What kind of feedback did the county or city have while they were developing those codes? Were people like, oh yeah, we really do need to do this, or was there kind of a mixed acceptance of that idea? Can you talk a little bit about
that? That's a really good topic, because there was a fight prior to the 2012 fire by all the building association and homeowners too, because there is an associated cost with building, and you don't have the freedom to, maybe use cedar siding or something like that. So we were in a pretty, probably 4 or 5 meetings that were pretty hostile, and then following the Taylor Bridge fire, that all changed because it was proven in that those fires are going to be out of control and the houses are going to burn, and if we don't do something different, it's going to continue. So I think that it made a major difference.
Yes, you're able to use the people's experience with the fire, sort of turned them on to the idea that maybe these codes would be useful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that wildland urban interface code may be difficult to work with, but it certainly saves lives and property.
Thanks, Russ. Anyone else have questions for Russ? Well, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate hearing from the Washington Network, and I do think it's, I love your pictures in these slides, Russ. It's nice to have some comparisons, and that is a really unique opportunity to see, like, here's a before, and here's how it worked when we had a fire and we weren't maybe quite as prepared, and then we've done a lot of work in the interim and we're more prepared. I think lots of places would like to be in that same position, to have a story where they don't lose homes. So it's great. Thank you. Again, go ahead and put some questions in the chat box about Russ's presentation if you have them. We have had a few questions about the CMAT presentation in here, and folks are answering those, and we'll circle back around at the end of the webinar to some of these questions that might, where you might want to have a little bit more discussion. All right, thanks so much, Russ, again. Our next presentation is from Gloria. Gloria is going to share a little bit about the windstorm that they had in Ely. So, Gloria, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thanks.
All right. Okay, this first slide is a picture of the path of the damage that the July 21st windstorm created in our immediate area. It was created by Matt Tyler, our Firewised coordinator from Lake County. This storm had wind speeds of 70 to 100 miles per hour. As Matt's been working on a rough estimate of acres affected by this windstorm in our immediate area, and we've come up with approximately 18,000 acres were affected so far. Our authorities are saying that this storm was a more devastating storm than our 1999 blowdown. Unlike the 99 storm, this storm happened in largely populated areas in the Wooey and the nearby city of Duluth. There were 2 fatalities from this windstorm. There were multiple buildings, both private and public, that were damaged, and of course thousands of acres of forest. Our emergency response was quick. Everyone pulled together to clear the roads, get trees off houses and cars, check with neighbors, and help with the efforts to get the power back on. The collaboration efforts of multiple agencies, businesses, and private owners in responding to this disaster gives me a lot of hope for our continued efforts to combine forces to help our community be more prepared for emergency situations. If you can flip to the next slide. This is an example. Our federal, state, and county and city partners opened up their gravel pits to allow landowners to bring their smaller debris, smaller diameter woody debris. We opened up 10 additional pits to the regular 2 pits that we have already. This debris is going to be tipped for woody biomass, or it's going to be burned sometime this winter. This action makes me hopeful that these agencies might allow future use of these pits for ongoing fuels reduction projects. In the past, it's been a bit of a struggle for me to have them open these pits. This is actually one of the smaller pits. There's just so much more. Our group quickly collaborated on creating packets of information for landowners that included the location of these disposal sites and guidelines. We provided a contracted directory of tree services, loggers, biomass suppliers, forest stewardship programs, and portable sawmill contractors. We created handouts for chainsaw safety and training resources and brochures on hand piling woody debris for burning and burning guidelines. This gave tools to landowners to help them deal with the cleanup efforts and future fuels reduction projects. Because of our varied rural population, we use a lot of different ways to distribute information. We use newspapers, the radio, emails, which we call our trap line, Forest Service website, a lot of public meetings, and mostly door-to-door delivery and talking to people. In our emergency preparedness debrief meeting, there seemed to be an increased motivation to develop evacuation strategies in Ely and the surrounding townships. And we also continue to discuss the expanded use of social media and emergency alert systems such as Code Red. I really see a growing interest on the part of private landowners in using the NRCS forest stewardship programs and the various fuels reduction opportunities that we offer private landowners. And I also see an opportunity in the future to promote the use of prescribed burns. We're still dealing with the windstorm of 1999. After 17 years, this debris is still a fire danger in the adjacent BWCA wilderness area. Our Forest Service is planning a 5,000-acre prescribed burn within the next week to reduce that danger for the private landowners that are next to it. Those private landowners were hit really hard by the storm, and they realized the importance of getting rid of this debris, but it's still a pretty intense and intense conversation that hopefully will get a little, they'll get more okay with prescribed burns. That's it.
Well, thanks so much, Gloria. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about what you guys learned from this event. I think it's always interesting to think about what sort of capacity and resilience translates from different kinds of events. And it sounds like you see a lot of opportunity in how response works for this event and how that might translate to a wildfire event. Are there other questions for Gloria? There's Katie Sternholtz has just put a link in the chat box for folks that are interested in learning more about the biomass energy facility where some of these materials that are up on the screen will end up. So you go ahead and click that link if you want to learn more about that. You know, Gloria, one thing I was interested in, you mentioned a kind of post-event meeting of resources and that you guys talked about, you know, things, lessons you learned maybe. Did you guys run that as kind of an after-action review, or what kind of format did that meeting take?
Well, it's actually starting to be a monthly meeting now, and it started with our new emergency manager from St. Louis County. At least the group resumed. So this was, you know, the topic, the beginning topic of that meeting was to debrief about what happened with the emergency response. So a lot of different people were, you know, our emergency response team that were in charge of getting the people or the bodies out of the boundary waters, how that went. We talked about communication, how that went, you know, so it, you know, that's how it started, is that debrief, yeah.
So it sort of sparked more regular meetings with folks. That sounds like a great outcome. There's a question Liz Davies asking here, Gloria, about how you guys address minimizing other garbage from showing up in the pit. Do you have issues with that? What did you learn about that?
This is that's an interesting question, because that definitely is why the different agencies have not wanted to open up the pits, because in the past this has been an issue. But these pits, knock on wood, we haven't had that issue so far. They are monitored by the Forest Service, and actually the Highway Department has been pushing the debris up so more people can put debris in, and so far people have been extremely respectful of the guidelines. But we are closing the pits probably at the end of this month, one, because they're full. And like I said, I'm just hopeful because of how people have respected guidelines that in the future there will be opportunities for us to open up those pits again. Probably not for like all summer long and a free-for-all, but if there's designated times and a way to kind of monitor those pits to make sure there's not garbage and stuff, because that, you know, that is a problem when you have open pits, especially in areas, you know, really rural areas. But so far, people have been extremely respectful of the guidelines.
Great. I wonder, is there anyone else out there who wants to share something about their experience with accepting debris and how you deal with making sure that it's just the kind of debris you want and not, you know, Uncle Frank's refrigerator? Any other lessons about that? Well, I know this is a problem in lots of places, and I suspect that many of you have developed some strategies to deal with this. So go ahead and feel free to put some ideas in the chat box, or we can circle back around to this at the end of the call if we have a little bit more time. I know just from my own experience in my community, that would definitely be an issue we would need to deal with, and it does make it hard when you want to provide an opportunity for people to deal with their debris, and but you do need to keep that clean, especially if you plan on using it and shipping it. Having household garbage mixed in would be pretty problematic. So that's a definite problem, I think, that lots of folks have. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we can ask a couple more questions if folks have them. I do want to point out that in the chat box, there were a couple of questions about more specifics related to what the CNAT team had recommended to the Bridger-Teton folks, and there's a link there to the report that was developed, and it is on Podio, so you can check that out. And then there was another question about if the CNAT team could help in terms of working with folks with limited English proficiency and other populations. And I'm not sure if that's a CNAT type project, but there is a new opportunity that the network's going to actually have. The Nature Conservancy is going to have the opportunity to work with a woman who specializes in cultural competency. So she'll be joining our team and working part-time with all of us in the next month or so. And so we'll have more to share, and we hope that that resource can be used by all of you. It's definitely something that I think we want to think about and work on, and so she's going to help us do that. So stay tuned for more about that. Just scroll down and see if there's other questions that have popped up. We had a question here for Gloria about if there's resistance to burning these piles. Has there been any conversation about that versus the tipping?
Actually, there really hasn't been a problem with you know, people objecting to the burning, which is interesting. I mean, I think we realize that, you know, it's a way that we do need to, you know, one of the ways to get rid of this. We'll see. I mean, once 10 piles are burned and the smoke is in the air, you know, it might definitely be a problem. But I think the biggest concern right now is, and this is particular, I've heard from emergency managers and firefighters, they're concerned about the piles being lit unintentionally. And I know a lot of, like I said, emergency people are concerned about that. So they've been visiting the pile, so to speak, and really kind of making sure that something like that doesn't happen. But I was at a meeting and talking to one of the emergency people, and they were very concerned about that